Good afternoon. This is the July 18th meeting of the Osceola County Expressway Authority. We have an agenda before us. It's available if you need a copy of it. On the agenda, it just says hear the audience as the last item before adjournment, but we're going to, as a policy decision, move the hear the audience up to the beginning of all of our meetings in the future, and I'm going to start it now. With that in mind, before I do that, I just want to say one other thing, but with that in mind, from now on in the meetings, be prepared if you want to talk to us to do it right off the bat so that we can keep in mind your comments as we go through the processes of each meeting, and I think that'll work out better. Now, I did a lot of thank yous, but I saved one to the last for two reasons. First, she absolutely hates when she gets singled out in these conversations. And second, because every team has that silent person in the background that just grinds it out and gets it done and meets the targets and fulfills the obligations and keeps track of the little loose ends and is smart besides. Now, it doesn't hurt that she's also very attractive. So with that, I would personally like to thank Michelle, who has been a rock through this process for the last couple of years.
She will get back at you for
No,
that.
she's still mad at me now.
Yeah, you're in trouble now. You'll miss the next notice of the meetings.
I threatened, it was her birthday, obviously, every year we have one, don't we? Yeah. Anyway, it was her birthday, and I threatened to sing happy birthday to her in the meeting, and she told me she would personally come over and axe me with if I did that. So anyway. Okay, so this is a public hearing. Would anybody be interested in talking to this board about any subject whatsoever? We would entertain public comment at this time. Yes, ma'am. This is a surprise. Okay, I lied.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Annette Brown-Best from Poinciana, former co-founder of the Friends of the Poinciana Hospital, of which will be opening probably the end of this month, and I'm elated with that. On top of that, I want to thank all of you for pushing the Poinciana Parkway for Poinciana. As he said, as Mr. Mercer said, less than 2 years. It was October when we started this process in Poinciana, and I just want to thank you for making this thing happen for us in Poinciana.
Seemed like a lot longer, though, didn't it?
It seems like another baby being born.
Yes, it did. Thank you. Would anybody else care to make a comment? If not, we're going to move on. We have to do some work. We have selected a design-build firm, and so the first process will be to, as a selection committee, they've sent that recommendation to us. We know that we heard them recently, and now it's up to us to accept, reject that as we choose that selection. So with that, Joe's going to talk about that.
Chairman, I have a suggested motion for the board would be to authorize the staff to undertake the process of completing the design-build contract with the #1 ranked firm, Junior Davis, and if unsuccessful, to doing so, then to have the authorization to move to the #2 ranked firm and so on. That would be the suggested motion for the board's consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next.
Chairman, I just want to also, to finalize this process, to announce that under the authority's procurement policy, of which this RFP was undertaken, the appeals process, just to put it on the public record, respondents have 10 days to submit in writing any appeal that they have, stating any specific objections to the process, including any documentation related to their objections, and the delivery has to be made to the procurement office by 1:30 p.m. on July 29th, and we will send an email to all the respondents to inform them of that in writing as well, but that's the announcement.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that completes the
Selection process. Okay, now, therefore, we've made a selection. We want to start moving, so we need an authorization for staff to enter into negotiations with the selected firms. That's firms because it's 1, 2, 3.
I'd like to make that motion that we enter into that.
Second.
Okay, now you were going to give me language?
The motion is to authorize staff 2, undertake the process of completing the design-build contract with the number 1 ranked firm, and if unsuccessful, move to the second ranked firm and
Et cetera.
onward.
Is that acceptable language to the motion and second?
Yes.
Any other questions on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. All righty. Before we go to the next item, I see somebody from Polk County here. I see somebody from Avatar here. This project would not have happened without the cooperation, obviously, of both of those folks. And because of that, I have talked to Commissioner Smith. We will be reconvening our Polk County Working Group here momentarily, now that we have actually something to report. And we'll be scheduling a date. We had tried to get our calendars. It might be in early September unless there's pressure to do it before that, because there's so much procedural stuff we have to do in the meantime. It's probably not productive for anybody's time, but we will start doing that regularly in September because it's critical we all stay engaged in this process. And the same thing is true with Avatar. We need to start meeting more regularly now with Avatar as we work through all these conditions of the development agreement to make sure that we dot the i's and cross the t's and fulfill all of our obligations that we need to fill to make that agreement work. So we need to sort of get the schedules together and figure out who meets how and when, but we want to do that on a regular basis. We don't want to have a surprise along the way, and it's now time to do that seriously because we're actually going to build this bridge. So with that, if that's okay with everybody, we're going to proceed that way. And yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there was a couple of questions about how the scoring worked. If
Yes.
you could go over that, I think it'd be great
Okay.
for the audience.
For all those people that are willing to put up with this 5 minutes of pain I'm about to put you through, that's fine. If you want to leave, I'll understand. The scoring system works like this. We issued a request for proposal to 3 selected candidates from a list of 13 potential candidates through a elimination process. Each of those candidates were given a scope of rules and regulations, if you would, a book of promises that they had to fulfill to qualify as a respondent to the proposal. And as part of that, there was a score sheet that was included in that to tell each proposer how they would be ranked and scored. The ranking and scoring was done initially when the proposals were given to us by a selection committee made up of technical people, not this board. These are highly trained FDOT, Florida Turnpike Enterprise, OOCEA individuals who are capable of actually reading those pages I was telling you that I skipped over about, right? And do the analysis. And they, after 6 weeks or so of scoring, delivered to us a score sheet with that ranking on it, with everybody's points and how they arrived them and all their notes and everything like that. Our board then, in the meantime, requested that the proposers deliver to us their final bid price. That was kept in a sealed envelope in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's porch, if you're old enough to remember that line. If you're not, that's an old Johnny Carson line. But anyway, it was kept sealed and secured. We did not know what those numbers were. Actually, nobody but the individual respondents knew what those numbers were. Until such time as we met, heard presentations by the proposers, and graded some up, some down, based on those presentations and our view of what we read in those proposers. We adjusted the final score, and then there is a mathematical formula made very clear before the process started as to how the price they were bidding and the points they were awarded in the score would be combined to arrive at a final number. And basically, you took the points and the dollars and you combined the two and you came up with this huge number. But at that point, the person with the lowest number, which means the highest number of points with the lowest number in relationship price, was awarded the contract. And that basically, believe it or not, that arduously complicated process is a state-mandated procedure. We followed the law. And I'll explain it again, but nobody will be here in the room if I do. Okay. So do you want to add anything to that, or is that clear enough? No, I didn't think so. Okay, with that, that's how we arrived at it. Any questions about that? Anybody want to ask a question about that? Okay. Thank you. I don't think I could do that again. So with that said, we are going to continue with the agenda, if we may. We're going to talk about the next major steps that we're going to follow. and that's a funding procedure. We'd have to get the money now.
All right, Mr. Chairman, as you said, the next step in the process is to move towards a financing for the project, and the process of the financing is already underway. At the last board meeting, this board authorized the engineering and the traffic and revenue reports and the authorization for staff to engage both the engineering firm and the traffic and revenue consultant to prepare the engineering report and the update to the traffic and revenue report. So that's already underway. Those are relatively long lead items because they have to be prepared and reviewed and then finalized and then submitted to rating agencies for review and analysis and presentation. So that process is already underway. We are also working with the financial advisor to the county on both the structure and the timing for the financing. So that is also underway. We've had several meetings with them in terms of the structuring of the financing as well as the timing for the steps to get to a closing. And our current projections call for us to try to close in October or November of this year.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to summarize that in plain language for people like me. In order to get people to loan us money, we have to have an engineer that reads over the proposal and says, this is actually going to be able to be built. And then we now know the price that they're going to build it for, so that engineer will be able to look at that study and said, and yes, they can build it for that number. And that's part of the document we take to the bank when we ask them for the money. In addition, we did a traffic and revenue study last year, basically said, how much money do you think this road would generate in tolls over a period of time? And because it's been about a year since we've done that study and we won't be getting to the banks for another couple of months, we have to get that study refreshed. So we go back to the company and say, do a new analysis, use all the, use as much as you can that you did before, but we need the most up-to-date numbers we can take. So when we go to the bank, we can say, this is the way it'll really be when we actually open this toll road. And that's the traffic and revenue study that we've recommissioned to have done. So we are underway, and as Joe said, we hope to close at the end of October, early November. And the reason we have to delay that, we need all those reports and all that information and other stuff worked out before we can actually go to the bank. But we are on the way to the bank. We just have some stops to make along the way. Pick up bread, get some milk, then go to the bank. You got it? Okay. Any questions about the financing? Okay. With that, there being no more business before this board today that I know of, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
Woohoo!